I'm welcoming you to the 26th Congress of the European Society of Biomechanics. This is a pre-event of the Congress, and it is a special session where we will hear how to pursue a successful academic career. And the discussion will be led by a panel formed by Damien Lacroix, Ilse Jonkers, Aurélie Carlier, and Giuliano Lamberto. So I will leave now to Damien to start the session and the conference, the Congress.
Great. Thank you very much, Gabriele, for the introduction. So I'm sorry you can't see me because I'm showing my screen, so the camera goes off automatically. But thanks everybody for attending. I think I'm delighted to see so many people who are joining this pre-event session on a Sunday where it's the Wimbledon final and it's the UEFA Cup. So thank you so much all for your time. And I also would like to thank the time of Aurélie, Ilse, and Giuliano to be here, and I hope that we're all going to make this event worthwhile to be here. And so I'd just like to introduce very briefly everyone, and then everyone is going to introduce themselves in more detail. So I'm very pleased to have Aurélie and Ilse. I think we're both female role model, and that we need more. Yes, Aurélie. And I think I'm really delighted that we both have them. And Aurélie, I think, is she's not going to like that, but she's the rising star. And Ilse has a very large group already, and I think it'd be very interesting to hear their perspectives. I'm also delighted to have Giuliano Lamberto, who used to be a PhD student in Sheffield quite a few years ago now, and went to academia. And I think it's going to be really interesting for you. I think a lot of PhD students and postdocs are interested to hear, I think, the industry side. So how this is compared to academia. And I think Giuliano is in a special position to be able to talk about that. And I'm delighted to be here as well to share a bit of my experience. I'm from the University of Sheffield. I'm very much linked to the ESB. I was elected to the council of the ESB 3 years after my PhD and ended up being the president in 2010. So it's really a society that is very dear to my heart. So I'm happy to be able to contribute that. I must say that I have to make a little bit of a disclaimer. I've just very recently created a consultancy company which is called Success in Academia, and which kind of led to the proposal of this event, and this is why I propose services to academics. But it's really because I truly believe in this topic, and where I think that the more information we can provide, the better I think academics are going to become. So let me just go next slide. Just wanted to show a little bit who's attending this event. So this is based on the registration data. So as we would expect, a majority are PhD students, a lot of postdocs, and about 15% are on a permanent position, which is probably a fair representation actually of the society as a whole, but also the community in general. In terms of interest of the topics, so there's quite a wide range of interest for all of the topics, and quite a few actually have said that you're interested in all topics, which is great. So this is the agenda. We're a little bit late, but basically what we've divided the agenda into 5 different sections, let's say, 4 main presentations. So the first, we'll have Giuliano introducing, then giving a presentation on career differences between academia and industry. And then each of the presentation would be led by one of us as academic, and then with some inputs from two others. So Aurélie will lead the topic on the transition from postdoc to independent academic. I will lead the one on the leading your group, and Ilse will lead the one on the how to reach the good work-life balance. And then we'll like to have enough time for questions. So we've already captured the questions you've introduced in the registration data, but if we'll also have plenty of time for additional questions as well. If you want to ask your questions, please put it in the chat, and so we can collect them during the presentation, and then we'll try to answer them in a kind of a Korean manner towards the end. Then. Actually, I can't see so as I'm sharing, I can't see now the chat. So maybe I'll ask Ilse if you can monitor that and let me know if there's anything that we need to address. Okay, so I'll let now Giuliano to present on career differences between academia and industry.
Oh, thank you very much, Damien, and thanks for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. As Damien said, I've spent basically half of my career life between academia and industry. So I'll try to give this early career information for this presentation. With this presentation, so this is a short outline of the presentation. So at the start, I'll describe my journey in academia and my journey in industry, and then I will go through my current role and company. And start to discuss a bit the differences between academia compared to industry. We'll look at the pros and cons, and then understand what is my personal view and why I picked industry. We will see also some of the numbers on how I managed to get my first job in industry, and a bit of a lesson learned. Understand what could be improved, basically. We will look at some of the barriers for the PhD in industry and some of the roles available in the specifically in the medical device industry. We will close in understanding why PhD are so valuable in industry, and some closing remarks and final tips and questions. So please, Damien. So I started my career in Rome, where I did my master's degrees in medical engineering. So after that, I did a research assistant role for 1 year in the University of Rome for Italico, where I had to travel for a project on knee experimental computational biomechanics. After that, I went to Sheffield for a PhD. And a bit of postdoc. So again, the topic was similar, in addition with some work on the soft tissue artifact. So I did also a short postdoc in Sheffield, and this image shows just some of the latest results, but I'm not going to go through that with this presentation. Okay. So in industry, my career started in a company called Corin in UK, in the southwest of UK, where I was a product development engineer. So that's within the R&D department, and I was responsible of designing hip implants and instrument. So in this slide, you can see a bipolar device. So this is a hemiarthroplasty device for a partial hip replacement. So that has been decided when I was there, basically, and now it has been launched. So that's quite a good achievement. So whereas next slide is my current company. So I'm actually at the moment based in Switzerland in a company called Medacta International. I'm an R&D project manager, and I work in the spine division at the moment. So I'm responsible for the deformities section of the spine. And I mainly work with some pedicle screws that you can see some of them in the image here. Okay, next. So my current role and responsibility. So I have three main different areas of focus. So at the top, I'm a project manager, so I need to go through. I need to develop plans, prepare scope, and understand resources for each project, and then I have to track each project. You know, as soon as it starts, and it goes through the different phases of the design control. So the second bit is about design. So within each project, I'm the design leader. So I work at understanding what are the specification from surgeons, and then working on the geometry and some of the analysis of the device. And the third last bit is coordinating a team. So each team needs to be, each member of the team needs to be quite motivated to work within each project, basically. So I have to constantly work with a team in different departments. So that's the role of the project manager, basically, without having any direct report. Okay, so next slide is about my company. So I work in a company called Medacta. It's an international company specialized in design and production of innovative products for joint replacement, spine surgery, and sport medicine. So the vision came from our founder, who was originally a patient, and that convinced him on working on a new approach. That's the personalized approach. So as you can see here in this image, we have some technologies that are called My Solutions. So for example, you can see the knee in this slide. So a surgeon can get can work on some preoperative plan for each patient. And then once he's happy with the parameters, can then use some of the, for example, some of the 3D printed guides that are then shipped to the surgeon to execute that specific plan. Okay, next one is just to show that we are interested in academics as well. So we were always interested in hiring talents. So please check our page if you're interested, and talk to me also if you want. Okay, next one is trying to understand a bit more a knowledge of a different setting. So that's something I faced when I tried to go from academia to industry. So it's quite a different side of the world. I mean, at least it was for me. So there are different rules that needs to be understood. There are different ways of working in some of the cases. There are lots of overlap as well. But this is just an image to show that in order to transition from academia to industry, some of the roles and some of the information, they need to be known. So that's quite important. Okay, next one, a bit more boring. We will look at the table and look at some of the pros and cons of industry compared to academia. So this is my subjective opinion. It's everything. It's subjective. So in academia compared to industry, there is a lot of freedom of research and freedom, for example, of working on sharing data, information, whereas industry is more like a bit strict confidentiality. And most of the time, the work is assigned to you. You can negotiate a bit, but that's what happens most of the time. In academia, you have to find your own funds. That's quite important. Whereas in industry, the salaries is coming from the sales of the company, sales of the product of the company or the services. It tends to be in academia a bit more short-term contracts, especially at the start, and uncertainty in the future. Whereas the industry offers more permanent positions and job stability. In academia, the pay scale dictates the salary. Usually, in industry, it tends to be a better pay and with extra benefits and bonus. Okay, so next bit.
Oops, sorry.
Oops, that's too much.
Sorry, it went anyway.
That's fine.
Okay.
Perfect. So there is limited salary negotiation in academia, whereas in industry it's always negotiated. So that's why I put that in red. So that's something that if you're coming from academia, it's a skill that you need to learn quite quickly, basically. In academia, there are many holidays and working hour flexibility, whereas in industry, less holidays and strict working hours. In most of the company, I would say. The achievements in academia are based on publication. In industry, it's a bit more broad. So you have some a range of performances that are tracked during the year. So that works a little bit different. Publication in academia, I would say publications and also research grants. Those are quite important. In academia, there is a lot of access to conferences and the fun and the travel related to that, which in industry it's quite limited. Next bit is about, in academia, there is a lot of freedom and flexibility. So flexibility of your own work in terms of goals. There is a freedom to test new ideas and make mistakes, basically. In industry, there is a bit more structured work in terms of goals and time to achieve those goals, and there is more pressure from market to, there's not less freedom to test ideas. They can be tested, but there is always a trade-off with some products at the end, and there is a responsibility of patient safety. Last point for me that's quite important is like academia, lots of the jobs are related to specialties and locations. So if you are an expert in OpenSim, for example, well, you tend to follow the best laboratories that they work with OpenSim. So it tends to be quite challenging. You might need to travel from one place to the world to the other. In industry, there is a bit more freedom to change your job, and there are more jobs available, and I think it's easier to change job within industry rather than academia. Okay, so my personal view at the end is that why I picked industry is that because I was curious, I like the challenge to try something new, and I felt that there were more opportunities available, basically. Okay, so how I managed to find my first job, how many applications, 56 applications, that was down to 5 face-to-face interviews and 1 job offer, which of course I took it. So what I did, I researched the company before an interview. I worked on my gaps before the end of my PhD, so I could improve some of those gaps. I talked to friends in industry, and I committed to everyone to my decision to find an industry job, basically. What I didn't do very well, next bit, please, is work. It's basically, I assumed that the only job I could have done in industry was related to R&D, research and development, because I was doing research in academia. So now I'll probably focus more on understanding what are the roles available and focus on what is fundamental from the hiring manager to understand that. Let's try to put yourself in the other people's shoes, basically. So next, please, is so what are the barriers for PhDs in industry? So I have listed some of the things that from the point of view of industry, so on how PhDs are seen. So that those are some positive and some negative, of course. But the message in here is that so you need to be able to present yourself in industry, and make them understand who you really are, and not let them fall in a stereotype, for example. So that's quite important. Okay, next bit. Next, please, Damien. Okay, so here you can see some of the roles. So since it was one of my mistakes, you can see in that table that you were seeing some of the roles available for PhDs in the medical device industry. So it goes from R&D to marketing to regulatory, data scientists. I'm not going to go through each of them, but this is just to show it to you that there are plenty of opportunities out there. Okay, keep going. The next bit is we'll try to understand with some work done by Catherine. We'll try to understand why PhDs are so valuable in industry. So PhDs are master of innovators. So that means that basically to get a PhD, you need to innovate. You need to bring something new to to the state of the art. So that's why PhDs are always very good in innovating, because they learned how to do it basically for a PhD. Second point is PhDs are experts of conflict resolution. So for example, do you remember when you enter your meeting room with your PhD supervisor, with a couple of other professors, you know, everyone that had a good, very strong opinion. So, and you were there trying to, you know, to find your way through. So that shows that you're very good at conflict resolution. The third point is PhDs are doctors of learning. So PhD, philosophy of doctorate. Philosophy is the study of knowledge. So you certainly know how to get something new in your brain, you know, how to learn things quickly and better than the others. I think that's quite, those are some of the bits that are differentiating the PhD, you know, no matter the technical topic. Okay. So if you go ahead, Damien, so there is a but at the end. The problem is that, do you remember that island that I showed to you? From the industry also, they know very few about academia. So you have to communicate your values yourself, basically. There's no one else that's going to do it. And you need to cover the basics. So that means you have to understand how the basic principle of working in industry. Okay, next one. I think it's my last slide. So closing remarks. Both academia and industry have pros and cons. It is a personal choice based on your priorities and long-term goals, basically. Next is some of the tips. So I think first one is get some of the university services. If you want to apply in industry, get some of the university services to look at your CV and letter. Research well the company you apply for. Study at least one or two products in details and be curious. You know, ask many questions. You know, that shows very good interest in what you will do, basically. And reach out to other people with the same job in the company you apply. So because there is a bonus, most of the time there is a bonus available for if then you get hired, you get a bonus, basically. You know, that person get a bonus. It's not the case for my company at the moment, so no worries about that. And then don't get desperate if you don't receive a reply. Just keep trying and connect to me if you need help, basically. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Giuliano. So a round of applause, virtual applause to you.
Thank you.
There were some interesting questions, but maybe I think for the interest of time, we might go on to the presentations and then come back to the questions.
That's fine.
That might work better if you, I don't know what you think, the rest of the panel, but if that's okay, we'll move on then to Aurélie presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you all hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I will talk a bit about how to transition from postdoc to an independent academic, and then similarly to Giuliano also, let's say these are my views, and yeah, I'm also still figuring it out. So yeah, but I'm looking forward to sharing already what I have discovered, let's say, by now. So in the next slide, there's a little overview of what let's say my career has looked like so far. So I did a master's in biomedical engineering and then a PhD. During my PhD, I went abroad for 6 months to the US. And then I continued actually in the KU Leuven for a postdoctoral researcher. And then we'll also get back to that later, whether that was a good decision, let's say, to do a postdoc and a PhD in the same location. Then I moved to Maastricht, and there I kind of got a postdoc, let's say, position, but with the possibility to become a permanent position. So that was really this transition period. And then I got some grants, and then in the end, my assistant professorship. And you can also see on the right when, let's say, my first PhD students have started. So I have a small group now, let's say, with 3 PhD students and 1 postdoc. And you'll also see on the left that in between I got 2 children, which I actually find also very important to mention here as well, because it does happen. And you can see here a little picture of Theo and Alexander. And you can also appreciate that they're still very young, which also still challenging age at this time with many sleepless nights, but a lot of fun. So this is very briefly, let's say, my academic background. And so, yeah, let's say this transition period where you are a postdoc researcher looking for, let's say, a permanent position. How I feel is that when you're doing a PhD, I feel that you should very much focus on a particular methodology or a particular topic. And I think it's very important that you really become an expert. So it's really very narrow in that sense. But then you really gain a particular expertise, which can be, let's say, your unique selling point. And then when you start a postdoc or when you go to a postdoc position, I think it's important to broaden your horizon again. So to maybe apply your methodology, I don't know, in different tissues or cell types or to other applications, or maybe extend with other methodologies. So try to really go broad again. And then as an independent academic, what I feel is, let's say, the key word is scaling. And so in the next slides, I will kind of go into detail a bit more. So next slide, please. So how to go broader, let's say, because of course it's easier said than done, because you also only have 24 hours a day, right? So I think in your postdoc period, I think it's important to get involved in some side projects. So maybe you can, help out a colleague and collaborate within your institute or outside. You could, for example, offer your expertise, that you really developed during your PhD. And so this will get you some co-authorships, which is important, as already mentioned by the previous presentation. You do need, of course, sufficient publications. Similarly, so it kind of relates. So I think you can also start collaborations with other labs, that can benefit from your expertise or particular technology. And again, this can result in some co-authorships and also shows maybe that, it shows that you can collaborate, and it also maybe it gives you the opportunity to extend, let's say, your expertise to some other areas, which can be beneficial later on to apply for grants. And what you can also do is that you can try out some new areas or some new techniques while supervising bachelor or master students. I feel that these are, let's say, these are smaller projects, and they can also be a bit exploratory. And so these are, nice ways to try out, whether certain things would work or not, or what are the difficulties. And at the same time, you get supervision experiences. So some of the challenges, let's say, in this postdoc periods, these were also raised in the questions. I already list them here, but I also mentioned them at the end, and I'm going to actually comment on them at the end. But so there are indeed some challenges associated with this period. So next slide, please. So then you actually have this transitioning period towards an independent academic, because when you're a postdoc, I feel that so your project is still fairly defined. I mean, you're typically hired to a project or a particular grant, so you know what to do. And ideally, you create some opportunities to indeed have some side projects to extend, but this probably will be very limited, also because you do not have any funding to do so. Now, when you go to an independent position, because you also get much more additional roles, and I just want to list, let's say, this, or to make this to-do list explicit, because I think it also gives a good feel about what really a professorship entails. And again, this might also help to make them the decision to go to academia or to go to industry. So this is, let's say, my to-do list as a young academic. So of course, I need to set up my own research line. So this may imply to set up a new lab if you have particular equipment. It also means that you need to have money, of course, to buy that equipment. You need to set up particular studies, generate data, maybe set up collaborations, publish, network. And so the idea really is to get known in the field, and that people also know you for that particular expertise, let's say, or that they know that this is, let's say, the area that you're working on. So you need to get a bit of a name. Now, of course, in order to do that, you need to get funding. So it means that you need to have ideas, that you need to write grants, maybe also with other people. I'm at an institute where I also need to do education. I think this is valid for most universities. So this means that I need to get training for that. I need to understand the educational system within my university. I need to get education. I mean, in the sense I need to have, let's say, particular courses that I need to teach. I need to then teach them. And then also maybe set up new courses and coordinate them. And then, of course, I also have some administrative and leadership. So I'm setting up meetings, conferences. I'm also in the board of the ESB, for example. So I give outreach talks. I do, of course, review of articles. I'm also editor in certain journals. So these are, let's say, additional roles that you also take up. And then finally, and again, this is not the least, this is also a very big chunk of time, is that, of course, you're also responsible to hire your people once you got the grant and to then manage, of course, your group. So you're supervising these the students, you're giving them feedback, and so on and so on. So this is, let's say, your to-do list, but again, it also gives you, I think, a good feel of all the tasks that we are involved in, which makes it actually a very nice, let's say, it's a big variety. So I like the fact that it's that it's so different. So next slide, please. Now the tricky part there, I think, and I got actually this slide from a colleague, is that so you want to actually let's say develop a research line, right? So you want people to be that they know you for particular ideas or particular research line. But in order to set up, let's say, that research group idea, you need to have funding, of course. And so if I have then funding, I can then hire people that can develop these ideas. But often to get this funding, I kind of already need to have people to generate the preliminary data. So you're kind of in this catch-22, which is kind of difficult to, you need to kind of break through this vicious cycle. And it's particularly difficult, I feel, as a young academic, because obviously you're not established yet, you know, so also when they review the grants, then you are still junior and your CV is not that extensive yet. So you need to kind of break through this circle. And I think there's two nice ways in which I'm trying to do this for the moment, is on the one hand, as I said, I think master's students can actually be very nice in the sense that if you have good students, of course, you can supervise them and they can already generate some data that you might be able to use as preliminary data in your grants, but also maybe even use for publication. So I think this is one way to kind of break through this cycle. And also the funding, which I think is getting very difficult. Actually, it's really very hard competition, but I think there strategically it could be nice to make use of collaborations, so that you're not necessarily the main applicant, but that, you know, you're part of a bigger consortium, and that you can kind of make use of, let's say, the bigger names of you know, other people, but that you can still get a PhD student or a postdoc, and that you can kind of start building on your own ideas and gradually develop, let's say, your own research line. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this allows you then to kind of scale, because I think it's important as an academic, you need to become known, and so you do need to publish more, and you want to get maybe a bigger group. So that's why I think the scaling is so important, because you cannot do this on your own, right? Like I have so many ideas, but I only have, you know, 24 hours a day. I cannot do all the research myself. I need to have, let's say, hands. I mean, and this is not a nice way to put it, but I mean, ideally, if you have more people in your group, you can realize many more of your ideas. And so how to get to the scaling, again, this can be through side projects, this can be through collaborations, through students, maybe co-supervising students. I think this is also a nice opportunity for postdocs already, and then also if you're in this junior academic setting, to maybe ask more senior colleagues whether you can be involved in the supervision. In this way, you might again get some co-authorships, and then you can actually also put this on your CV. And so again, this helps you to scale a bit. So try to get some funding, and really, I think it's very important at this stage to get to work on your own vision and to get a unique research profile. Next slide, please. I think I'm also, yeah, these are actually my last 2 slides. So some thoughts. So what I feel is really important is the prioritization, because you have this very extensive to-do list. And I also feel that once you transition into an independent academic, that your work is not clearly defined. I mean, you can work on so many different projects. There's so many problems to be solved. We can always do more. So I think it's very important to learn to say no, or to think about what you find important, or what is, what problem you really want to focus on. I would also advise to think about the bigger picture. Not everything should be done at the same time. So also that to-do list does not need to be ticked off all simultaneously. I think it's fine to say, like, okay, let's focus on getting some papers out. This will then help you to get some grants. So maybe, you get grants already in your first year, but maybe you can wait a bit. And so, this kind of gives you some space as well. And I think this is something that I would advise you to discuss with your supervisor, or let's say, or with your mentor, somebody with maybe a bit more experience to kind of help you set out that path. And so this actually brings me to the last point on the slide, that I do remember, and this can be within your own institution, but can also be elsewhere, or a sounding board can be very beneficial to give you some perspective or some input and feedback on all the choices that you can make. Because I think there's so many different choices we can make. Also, academics can have a very different profile. You can focus much more. You could, there's different ways of developing yourself. And so getting some input there, I feel, is just, that can be very valuable. And then actually to move on to the next slide, I'm sorry, Damien, which is my last. So this is, let's say, the challenges. So should you go abroad or not? I feel that this is a very difficult question. It comes back all the time. So I think on the one hand, I can see why going abroad can be beneficial. So I also went abroad myself during my PhD. So for 6 months, I went to the US. And I think it is valuable to be part of a different lab at some point, because you do see, different ways that things get organized. You see how, other people may do science. I mean, I think it's just nice to also get, some input, different perspective. So I do see the value of that. But I do question whether it truly should be abroad. I mean, you could also just go to different universities within the same country, or I think you could also, through collaboration, obtain that. So I feel that this is a bit personal, and I think I kind of also, I don't like it that there's so much stress, let's say, also in grant applications, you see this, or in like personal grants, that they put quite some value on this. And I personally do not like it as much, because it is, for some people, it's just very difficult to do. Another thing that is often a challenge is to go to a different lab for your postdoc, or to say where you did your PhD. Also, that I think is different. Also, I think it kind of relates to the first one, where it can be of value to indeed show, like, look, I've got different perspectives, and I was also present in another lab. But yeah, in my case, I stayed. I wanted to finish off some work, which I was able to do. And then later on, I went to Maastricht, and I must say that when I went then to Maastricht, that I did realize, like, oh, this was really nice. Actually, I needed a different perspective, because I was kind of stuck, and I was doing the same thing all over again. And so moving to a different lab actually allows you often to get new methodologies, or to do something else. So it can really be beneficial to to switch. I think also there, again, it's a bit difficult. It has its pros and cons. And when to start looking around, and again, also when to leave. So that maybe, yeah, that's the final thing here. So why I decided to stay in academia was that during my PhD, I really liked it. I like the freedom that you have in academia and the fact that you can explore whatever you want, that you do not really have a boss and so on. So that's something that I really, really liked. And I kind of told myself, like, let's just give it a try. Like I was like, okay, let's just see whether I can find a postdoc position, let's just see where it goes. And if not, then, you know, I'll also be very happy in industry. Like for me, it was like, okay, let's just give this a try and just see. I was not too worried actually about these short-term contracts. Maybe I should have been more. I don't know. I was also a bit confident that I would find a position in industry. And so I just kind of, continued with the postdoc. And during my postdoc, then there was this position in Maastricht. And so then I kind of got into this position there. But yeah, so when to start looking around, I think, maybe 6 months or something before the end of your contract, I think it would be good to just already like look around what is possible in academia and in industry. And what I would also advise there actually is to let people know. Like I often say that to my own students, even master students, you know, let people know in your lab that you're looking for a particular position, even if it's in industry, because also in academia, we have, of course, contacts with industry. Because if I know that, you know, PhD students are looking for a job and I see some, you know, applications or vacancies passing by, then I can, of course, share those with you. So use your network, I would say, because often they get these kind of opportunities. And that can actually help you to identify interesting new positions. So I think this was my last slide.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Aurélie. That's great to hear your views on this. Ilse, what are your views? So just for the audience, what we've done is that for each topic, we've asked, so we have prepared 1 or 2 slides, additional slides to just show what is our views. And this was independent from the main presentation, so there might be some repetition, but I think it stresses then the importance of those points as well. Ilse.
Yeah, thank you very much, Damien. A very nice overview, Aurélie, and I can relate to a lot of things. You will see later in my own section of the presentation that my CV might not be so representative. I don't have a typical biomedical engineering profile, but that's just a disclaimer. I think, Damien, if you want to advance to the next bullet, I fully agree that, can you? Yes, just saying network. It's very important if you want to advance in academia. Academia builds on collaborations, and that is really different than industry. Also, that means that if you have a bit of an unfortunate encounter at some point with some of your direct collaborators, try not to burn bridges, because you will always have to fall back to some extent to the network that you're working in. I think also volunteering in relevant societies is something that can help to create visibility for your own CV. And then, Damien, if you can go to the last 2 bullets on the slide. So I think here you need to think big, and I heard that also in Aurélie's her CV. You need to take your future in your own hands, and you always need to stay honest to your heart. I mean, your research interest. Know what drives you. And if we go to the next slide, I just want to share 2 very personal things with respect to think big and take your future in your own hands. Well, I'm a bit older than Aurélie, and when I was postdocing, that was around 2000, it was not very common to go for international mobility, and especially being more coming more from clinical perspectives, it was not easy to reach out to a bioengineering group at Stanford University trying to get my own role in the team at that point, but I did it. I'm still very happy I did that. Coming back, there was no position available at KU Leuven, and I made the decision to apply for a professorship in Brussels University. And I still think that that was for me a very good step, because being accepted at Brussels, and you know I'm at KU Leuven, actually leveraged opportunities for me to remain at KU Leuven. So you need to be confident in yourself and try to leverage all opportunities that you have. About stay honest to your heart, at some point there was an easy opportunity for me to have a more permanent role in the research group. The only thing was I had to switch to functional MRI. There was for me a remote connection to looking at how muscles are taking control of locomotion, but it was for me too far away from what I'm currently doing. So also there, I did not change my research field, my topic of interest, but I still think that by making that decision, I could elaborate further the research line that I started. So these are just two things that I think are very important for yourself. Consider these critically, and I just wanted to share these two things with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilse, for sharing this. So just want to also to share my top 5 advice, let's say, on how to transition from postdoc to permanent career. So I think, my view is that the postdoc period is a unique opportunity, I think, to prepare yourself and at the same time strengthen your skills in a solid team. So I think first, just to repeat on what's been said, build your network, and I'm not going to stand on this, but I think this is key as well. Work on your core assets. I think you shouldn't forget that. At the end of the day, where we're being assessed on publications, the presentations are like this at the ESB are very good opportunities for you to get some visibility. So, that's really should be, I think, your emphasis is to try to excel at those really. I think similar to what Aurélie was saying, I think is, by broadening yourself, I think you need to be curious and be interested in different, topics, so that actually can expand your employability opportunities. So within your own group, just be, try to interest yourself with what others are doing, asking questions, and so that you can actually talk also about those topics if it needs to be in an interview, for example. Get some teaching or supervising experience. Aurélie has discussed this. I think this is key as well. And I think something that, working on your 5-year plan is really, for me, is really critical. And this might sound a little bit daunting for some of you, but I think this is actually very important to be clear in your head what you want to do in the next 5 years, so that whenever you apply for a job, you're going to have to lay down your vision, and that's already been done. And what you want is to be able to create your niche. So to make you distinctive from anybody else. So that's what's gonna this 5-year plan is gonna help you as well. Okay, so we had quite a lot of questions in this topic, but we're really running late in the agenda. So same as in previous topic, I think we'll come back to this. Now, if you have any questions on this topic or the previous topic introduced by Giuliano, please put it in the chat, and we'll also pick them up at the end. Okay, so I'm gonna keep presenting, and we're moving on to the topic on how to lead your group. And just a little bit as a short bio to illustrate what I've been doing. So since I graduated my PhD, so this is very different types of groups, and I think what is a group, and I think for me a definition starts with 2 people. So the top left is actually me on the right here with my supervisor, Sir Patrick Prendergast. And this was in the ESB in Dublin. And I think, when you want to lead, you can already start practicing when you actually supervise, a master or an undergraduate student. That's already leading. I moved to Barcelona in the biomaterials group. And this was a much fairly large group in terms of academics that were available there. But I was the only one really that had an expertise in biomechanics, and that made it a little bit special for me. But that gave me the opportunity to actually start leading with senior academics as well. And then I got my own group, and I think this is where most of you would, would consider yourself when you're doing, starting your independent research, and that typically is, 1 or 2 PhD students and maybe 1 postdoc, and that's already a good size to, to really show your abilities to lead and to develop your own research that can be, excellent. Quite quickly, I moved on to a much larger group actually within Barcelona, which is made of PhD students and postdocs. And in 2012, I actually moved to Sheffield, and with Markovic, you can't use here, we started to build up a musculoskeletal biomechanics group involving actually quite a lot of academics, so senior academics like Gwen Riley or Claudia Mazza, but also junior academics. Enrico Dallara at the time was doing his postdoc, he's now in the ESB Council, Shannon Lee, Cecil Perro, and quite a lot of students. Now, this was very different for me because that meant a different kind of leadership, because I was dealing a lot more with academics, permanent academics that I also had to lead. So I think that for each size, there is different dynamics and different ways to exert your leadership style, and that's something that you're gonna learn as well throughout your career. Now, I'm going to go quickly on those because I don't want to spend too much time and keep some time for the questions. But I really think that there's quite a big distinction between leading and managing, and I prefer very much the term leading rather than managing. I think a lot of universities have adopted an enterprise mindset that is, based on some financial sustainability and performance competition with other universities so that they can attract the best students. And some performance indicators have actually been borrowed from the industry, but I think that the universities work in a very different way, and managing is very much objective driven, where the pursuit is really to attain a set of objectives that are usually fixed on a yearly basis, and the role of the manager is to create an environment so that those objectives are met, in an organized, timely, and efficient manner. Now, a leader, I think, has a very different role, and the role of a leader is mainly to support his team in achieving those goals and objectives. So it really supports the strengths of the team members. It helps them go through challenges, set directions, and have a long-term vision, which really goes beyond then the yearly objectives. So for me, leading a team really means that you take care of everyone within the team, and that you ensure that each member of the team feels supported then all along the way when they work with you. And that's distinct, I think, than what you normally a manager would do. Now, if we look at what you as a leader, I think are important to do, the first thing is that I think you should, in addition to build your group, it does take time, and the growth is slow. So my advice is always to think long-term, really, instead of short-term. So think more about quality instead of quantity, I think, for example. I think it's important for you to be familiar with the different leadership styles that are traditionally recognized. So, we can have a tendency to have a more natural leadership style, and it's good to know it and practice it. But I think it's also important to adapt your style to each individual and each situation. So you cannot always be, for example, an authoritative leader or supportive leader. You need to be able to exert all the different leadership styles. I think this is key. Now, leading by values is not always the best approach, but I think that in academia it works well, I think, very often. So most people in academia are there because of their values, and it's good, I think, to share your values with others in your group so that you are in tune, or others know why you're doing some things. I think it's also important for a new member in your team, when they come in, to know what are your values. So as a leader, I think it's also important to know what are the values of your team members so that you can adapt. And that doesn't mean that your values should be the same than theirs, really. So for example, one of your team members may have very strong objection in working with embryonic stem cells. And that might not be a problem for you. But in that case, you really need to demonstrate that you care for the value of that person, and that, for example, you would not force them to work, to use embryonic stem cells. But at the same time, you also want to make them understand that it's also important for you to work on this topic, and you can give reasons for it, and understand that other people want to work on that too. So I think sharing values and having a mutual respect for them is really the best way to create trust in the team, which is quite critical as well. Now, I think as a leader, you need to set goals and objectives, a bit like the manager, so for each member of your team. But what you want to do, I think, is to stretch everyone, and not by the same amount. So my view is that everyone should do their best, and best is different for every person. So you need to understand where each person in your team stands, and by how much you can stretch them in, I think, in a yearly basis. And so that stretch, for example, will vary over time. So it will be different for first-year PhD student than it is for third year. So you need to be able to account for that. So I think overall, leading, I think, is listening to the team and helping them to unlock situations or find new paths when they are in a challenging situations. Perhaps, sorry, I'm moving ahead myself again. Okay. Now, there's a few points that I'd like to quickly highlight for a leader to get a high-performance team. And first, I think it's really, as I said before, essential for you to have a clear vision and objectives for the next 5 years and be able to communicate them to your team. So you're the captain setting the direction, so it has to be clear really in your head where you want to go. You need to communicate your expectations to each team member so people can't guess what you expect from them. So, if you hire a PhD student, it's good to tell them what you would expect, from them in terms of publications or, participation to conferences. Same for a postdoc, where it might be, even already in the first year, how many publications do you expect for them to do, and what kind of publications are you expecting them? I think that competition is often seen in some lab in the States, and I think it's particularly unhealthy in the long term. So I'm not keen on that. I think it can lead to good short-term results in terms of publications, but I think it's terrible for the unity of the team and the long-term output. However, I really believe in the virtue of friendly rivalry. I think that it's very important to encourage everyone to do their best, to reward, publicly each success, and so that it actually motivates others to do the same. Your communication to the team, to the individual, among the team members or from the team to you, I think is essential. And this will avoid mistake, misunderstanding, delays. So you need to be able to favor this whenever you have meetings or have mechanisms to have a free, honest, and transparent communication in your team. I think this is essential. I think it's your responsibility to promote a culture of improvement. So it's up to you to discourage, people from taking shortcuts. For example, you want to be able to put a structure in place that will favor the integration of new members in your team, to ensure the legacy of your research, or to have really everyone striving to do their best. And something important as well is, don't forget that I think it's important to act as a role model. You're the leader, and people are going to view you and act like you. Accountability is always key, I think, in a team, and even though you're ultimately you're the person who's actually should take leadership and accountability for everything that happened in your lab. I think that you should be able to share leadership and accountability as well. And that goes by exposing your team members to external assessment, like conferences, like this one, for example. And I think it's important to always have this growth mindset for your team. So you might have it for yourself, but also think that that should be the case for your team as well. Celebrating success, I think, is key. So whenever you have a publication, an award, or whatever recognition, I think you need to celebrate it. But you just need to be consistent, so that you don't appear to favor some people more than others. So celebrating as a team is a good way to boost the morale and the productivity of the team. So never forget that, I think. And finally, I think it's always good to promote autonomy. So encourage, reward personal initiatives when there has been some internal external collaboration. If one of you, for example, PhD students, contacts a colleague of yours without telling you, don't think that it was because of a lack of trust towards you, but I think rather a sign that the person is ambitious and wants to grow. And if you think that at the end it was inappropriate, then, talk to the person, and I think it will help the person to grow, and I think both of you will benefit from this. Okay, so this is all from my side on the leadership of a group. And Ilse, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, maybe coming back to leadership style or how to best coach or manage people in the group. I followed a course on situational leadership, and for me that was very important because they told me there that it's okay to vary the way that you interact with people depending on both how they deal with direction and how much support they need. So the fact that, for instance, with master theses or very junior people, you really need to direct them, whereas if you have someone who is very proficient and that who also is very supportive of your ideas, that you can actually delegate. So try to feel what the competence of a person is and adjust your leadership style to that person is very important, because it can create sometimes frustrations if you're over directing someone who actually knows what to do it. And I still feel that it's a very thin line, and in academia we are typically at the coaching, supporting side, but I find this model very important to try to position yourself to your team members.
Thank you, that's very important indeed. Okay, I'm going to skip on the questions, and then we'll move on to the last topics on how to reach a good work-life balance. It's led by Ilse.
Yes, thank you very much, Damien. Okay, if we can advance to the next slides. I thought it was good to maybe start with a short introduction to myself. So I was born in 1917. You could calculate my age from that. You see here a picture on the left side of my family. So I have 3 children. You see my husband here, and we have a dog who is very important because he takes me on walks whenever I have problems organizing my work. If you could press enter or return, Damien, now. For long, I had the ambition to become a professional musician, which is very far away from where I am now, but I'm still very active in choir singing. And I think that also shows my personality. I'm not someone who is in front of the stage, but I like to belong to a group that can move forward and have good performance. The pictures on the right side, I like being outside in nature. I very much need to decouple myself from time to time and find quietness. Okay, next slide, please, Damien. So my academic biography, when I started, Damien, now you might just press advance a couple of times, sorry about this. So I'm trained as a physical therapist at KU Leuven, and in the final year of my PhD, I actually wanted to stop with doing my PhD because I felt that my research was not having any impact. And at that point, they were starting the gate analysis lab in Leuven, and I actually applied to become the person responsible for the installation of the gate lab. But they did not select me, but they took someone who already had a PhD. However, I kept collaborating with them, and in the final year of my PhD, I started working there half-time. And I think for me that was at that point very important to also see the clinical application of my work. I really needed to see that at that point. I finished my PhD in 2000, and then, Damien, if you can press enter, I went away for a short research visit to work in a clinical gate lab in close to the Welsh border in collaboration with the University of Oxford, and I did a 3 months visiting scholarship there. After that, if you can press return, Damien, I went for a postdoc in the States. So I spent 2 years in Stanford University. I took my 3 children and my husband with me, and we transitioned to work with Scott Delp. I wanted to stay in the States. I was fully committed to staying with the team there, but I had a husband and he wanted to go back to Belgium. So we went back to Belgium. And if you can press return now again, Damien. I finished then my postdoc at KU Leuven, where since 2009 I first was a tenure track professor, and now I'm a full professor at KU Leuven. We are 3 female PIs in the group, and we are leading a group of, I think, about 25 PhD students at the moment, and around 10 postdocs. You see here that I have quite some experience in supervising PhD students and postdocs. Okay, so that's my academic self for the moment. So let's move to the topic of work-life balance. Damien, if you can go to the next slide, please. So I think what is very important is that there is no good work-life balance. It all depends on what feels right for you. So this is a very difficult question, because even if you talk about it to others, it will always other things will come up. So it is what is good for you, but of course you can get your inspiration from others. Less is more. What does it mean? Well, I think good work is important, good life balance is important, and it's even better if you can combine the two. I always struggle. I know that I'm working very hard, but I know that it feels good. I have difficulties with people who want to have the good success in academia, but who do not want to put in the hours. So I think there always needs to be a bit of both. Okay, if you can go to the next bullet, Damien. I think what is very important is you should try to find ways to protect yourself when you're in academia. And I think that is already the case when you are a PhD student. You need to use the support that you have around you. That can be a mentor, it can be your partner, it can be your family, or even a pet. Next slide, please. So how does a typical working day look like for me? I typically start at 8 a.m. It used to be 8:30, and I had a 20-minute cycle ride to campus. Now I just jump in an online call typically. I typically end at 7 p.m. For me, dinner is an absolute deadline. 7:30, the food is on the table. My husband cooks typically. And if I do not meet 7:30 deadline, my food will be cold. However, I will typically restart at 9 p.m., but not on Friday and Saturday. That is my night off. I typically have spillover moments. That is, my husband goes shopping on Saturday morning, and then I know that I have a couple of hours if I need to do something urgently that I can do. And sometimes, of course, I also work on Saturday and Sunday afternoon, but only those things that I want to do myself. I will never squeeze out things for a deadline in these moments. Next slide. So this is a view of a typical working week. You see it's quite crowded, and something I struggle with is the fact that I need to find a combination between working agile and be available for the needs that present themselves, or having a structured agenda. Personally, I feel very comfortable with having a structured agenda, because then I can plan everything according to my own needs. But you will notice the more senior you get, the more difficult it becomes, and you need to be there for your team, although not all the time, of course. Also, I have these invitations that suddenly pop up in my calendar because I'm involved in several committees, and these now are just sent out automatically, so you need to reorganize yourself in order to meet those. Next slide. So I think we all know that in academia, there is quite a workload. Damien, can you try to move to the next one? Yeah. And for me, what is...
I think there's some delay with the slides, that's why.
Yeah, if you can go one back then. Okay, so yeah, I think I've learned to develop some survival strategies, and I think it's very important that when you notice that something works for you, that you try to keep it. So for me, having some me time is very important. That can be either scientific formation. I once said to someone, and I still believe in that, the day that I have no longer the feeling that I can learn something myself and I keep envying my PhD students, that is the day I will quit academia. I think for me, personal learning is very important. And if you know that that is very important, you need to try to keep it on the schedule. I also developed some rituals. That means if I need to do a PhD revision, I will read it in our coffee shop. Also, if I need to start thinking of a new project, I go to the library. And if COVID was difficult for me, it was because a lot of these rituals were no longer in place. Also, we have an annual research group retreat in where we spend time to brainstorm on projects. And also for me, that works very well. I value very high personal development, so I would encourage you to seek some leadership, negotiation, priority management courses, because that, on the one hand, gives you the idea that you're still working on yourself and you're not just working for your team or your group, but also you can get some practical hints and tricks from those. We have an academic buddy group with 4 academics of different universities. We meet every 3 months and we drink our aperitif, or how do you say it, now online, just to share experiences. So make sure that you have also a group of peers to whom you can relate. And personally, I have an academic coach that I also consult from time to time. And on the other hand, I try to play piano from time to time. Maybe if you can move to the next slide. It comes back to these survival strategies. So you need to know what for yourself is very important. And of course, there are things that need to be done, but make sure that the things that that tick for you, that you also prioritize them and also use them as a reward strategy for yourself. Motivation helps to manage stress, and it's important that you have it. For me, I think it's important to make motivation explicit. So I often raise the question, why did I ever accept to do this? And if I cannot formulate an answer to that, it means that I need to get that thing from my to-do list, because typically the things that keep me motivated are the ones that I can actually answer to that question. For me, it's important that it's not so much the hours you put in, but you also need to think on what do I get back from this. So try to have that also when you decide on which of invitations. So learn to say no, but in your formulation of no, always make sure that you have something in there why it's not of interest or why it's not motivating yourself. Next slide, please. So it was also already said by Damien and Aurélie that you need to define your personal roadmap to success. So it is your journey towards where you want to be. So there are, of course, time and priority management tips and tricks, and it's good to follow a course on that. You will learn that you have these different quadrants about important, urgent, not important. You need to be able to kind of structure the tasks that you pick up. You need to do 60% of the important things, and then they say 10% should also be attributed to things in the future. I think in academia, if something is under pressure, it's the important, not urgent things. Think about your next grant. And for that, going to conferences is actually very important, because that is the time where you have time to think yourself. So I feel that I get very stressed if I feel that what I consider important and not urgent can no longer be on my calendar. And I try to have dedicated time slots. Typically, I overrule them, but just having the mental note in my calendar that I need to consciously decide whether I will do something important, not urgent, and let it go for something not important, not urgent, helps me in making the decision whether or not I will take it from my calendar, yes or no. Next slide, please. Something that helps me very much is to have a good structure in keeping track of all to-dos. So there are different ways of doing that. For me, Trello works very nicely. But there are different ways of keeping your to-do list, and I also sometimes change. Sometimes I do it electronically. Here in front of me, I have several post-its of what I want to do before I leave on holiday. So be organized. It helps you to have an efficient way when you have 5 minutes spare to just find those things that you can do quickly. I use color codes for that, but most of the priority management courses, also what you find online, will help you in getting to that information. Okay, next slide. So it's important to organize yourself. I do it typically daily. I definitely do it weekly. For longer term perspectives, I do it monthly. You need to know how you can best organize yourself. I know for myself that between 5 and 7 in the afternoon, I'm quite productive. Don't ask me why, but it is that time slot. So I also try to make sure that I still have some time there, and I will try to avoid to have meetings in that time slot. For other people, it's mornings. You need to be aware of that. And I think important there is that you also tell it to other people, that you say, okay, I want to at least have your, for instance, if it's about articles or if you need to give feedback, that you clearly communicate what you expect from other people. And I also make notes in my calendar that I will receive an article for feedback at a certain time. It doesn't always mean it doesn't always mean that I can actually plan it, but typically it helps me to have that mental note. I think what is also important, that is that if you collaborate with other people, that you just ask what works best for you. I have colleagues that work very well with short emails. Other people just want to have a phone call. I think it's very easy if you try to discover how your colleagues want to work. Next slide. I think here what is most important is that if you know where you want to go, that you try to really lay out the process, but avoid micromanagement. So it is important to have intermediate goals and milestones. And for me, it's very important to make a difference between this is what really needs to be done or this would be nice to have. That helps me in managing my emotions when something goes wrong. If it's just something would be nice to have, then I typically do not worry too much about that. I think also having an ideal scenario and always having plan B defined, or at least have it in the back of your head, is also something that helps here. Important here is that when you need to work with others, that again here, you need to be very clear by when you need their input so that you can take that into account. So that typically means that you need to make your own structure, or the structure that you want to work towards, that is known to the people you collaborate with. And then if you can go to the next slide. I think it is very important that you take time off and that you switch off, and also that you liaise with other people. I can't stress this enough. It's one of the things you hear a lot, but yeah, taking a distance helps you in seeing again the broader picture. And I think that is really, really important. So allow yourself to take time off and switch off. Next slide. What I find very important is that, especially for your work-life balance, that you just make explicit to the people around you that you have a deadline, or that you have a specific goal. Here at home, of course, the children are already a little bit older. It helps me a lot to secure some time to work on the things that I find important, even if it is at times that the family see as conflicting with family time. So I think I always make very explicit why a certain goal is important to me, and this really helps me. Also, I think what is another important thing is that you know who are your allies. If you know where you want to go in life, you need to know who are the people that can actually support you and that will be able to coach you and that will also be willing to mentor you through the process. I think this is, for me, my family for a large part. Of course, the children are already a little bit more grown up, but also having some academic mentors and an academic support group is for me very important there. Okay, thank you. I think this is where Aurélie takes over.
Yes, great. Thank you very much, Ilse, for sharing this very personal journey. Aurélie?
Yeah, so yeah, for me, work-life balance, I think Ilse already touched upon, I was nodding the whole time, I think, or almost the whole time. So I agree with everything that was said. I think it's a continuous exercise, and sometimes it leans a bit more to work and sometimes it leans a bit more to life, let's say. I kind of chose this picture because I think it kind of nicely represents how I feel for the moment, especially with young children. Like it's everything flows into each other for them, and also again with the pandemic, I think, but that's actually okay as well. So maybe just in the beginning, Ilse showed her scheme. I cannot do that for the moment, so I work 40-45 hours a week, sorry, but so let's say starting at 8:30 in the morning and finishing 7, that's something that I can do. So I typically start at 8:30, maybe also sometimes 9, and then at 5, because of course my children, I need to get them and I still need to feed them and so on. And then I do start also in the evening again. So typically 3-4 evenings a week, which means like, let's say 7 till 9, so 2 more hours, something like that. And not in the weekends. So I also have very clear boundaries. I find that also very important. So, and I also need that because sometimes I do work in the weekend. So these are, let's say, these spillover moments that also Ilse talked about. And that's fine for a particular period of time or indeed for an important goal. But it cannot be consistent because I noticed that this really drains me. And so since I only can work so many hours, I need to, of course, be very efficient and really prioritize and organize myself very well. And I kind of make use of the things that also Ilse has touched upon. I can also only advise to clearly set boundaries and to take time off to recharge. So for the moment, like there's still 1 week to go, let's say. So next week there's the ESB Congress, and then afterwards I go on holiday, and it's also time now. I feel that it has been busy enough. And I also really communicate to my team members, like, look, I'm gone. You will not receive emails from me. I will not read emails. And so it's really time to recharge. And I think this also has been said before, but I think this, again, also for work-life balance is very important to really say, what is academic success? I mean, if you decide to stay in academia, what is being successful for you? You know, do you want to have a group of 50 people? You know, do you want to win the Nobel Prize, or maybe not? Or do you want to have a nice group and you know, do very good research, but maybe then also, you know, combine that with a family life? I think it just also depends really what you want to get out of it, and what you, how you see it, and how you actually also need it, right? Like, I think I'm very productive also due to my children, because they actually force me to relax, right, and to give me perspective and so on. So yeah. And I kind of started with this, but also I can end with this. So for me, it's a never-ending exercise. Like, there's some weeks that I really feel like, okay, this is a nice balance. Like but there's some weeks where I'm like, oh, yeah, I can't get my work done because life gets priority. When my kids get sick, for example, or other things happen. Or sometimes I'm writing a grant and there's the deadline approaches, and that kind of takes over. So I think it's a continuous exercise. And I also have, let's say, my husband is a very important team member. So he kind of also has say in this, and he will also tell me, let's say, when, you know, things are getting out of balance in whatever kind of, whatever kind of orientation. Typically when I'm working too much, then he will start to say like, okay, maybe it's time to, or when will it be over? But I think that's also very important, so that it all stays nicely in balance.
Great, thank you very much, Aurélie, for your insights on this topic. So just, you know, I'd like maybe to share my experience, which I think are similar and different than the two of you. And I've have to, you know, first I'd like to share a bit what has happened up until 2018. And I think similar to you, I was working around, you know, 45, 50 hours, but probably a lot closer to 50 hours a week. And I was still conscious of doing some exercise. So I've been commuting every day. Now, I had one rule, which was that I had no email and no work on weekends and on vacation. And this actually worked pretty well all the time. Only some exceptions were, you know, if there was anything urgent, then I had to do something on the weekends. But normally I wouldn't work on it, and really prioritize the family. So I also have 2 kids, and I do want to spend some time with them. Now, I've been away from home, I think probably typically around 30 days per year, which I enjoyed very much, to be honest. But it does put a bit of a strain on the family as well. I know that my wife never liked it, but I do feel that this is part of the job. So I think that's, you know, it's a plus or a minus, depending how you see this. However, I feel over time, I did feel that I was really feeling stressed and having had some kind of a mental fatigue. In the few years actually before that, I could see that my creativity was going down, to be honest. It wasn't quite the same, and I was more reactive than active. And I think that's, you know, something we've all talked a little bit, but maybe not stressed so much. I think it's very important to be able to be active, so to have inputs from you rather than you responding to inputs from other people. And this is where the prioritization is very important. So I had, you know, a gradual burnout, and I didn't quite realize it. But what happened in my life is that at the end of 2018, I actually took a break. So I took a leave of absence from the university for 2 years, and we reversed roles with my wife, and I took care of my 2 kids. So that did happen for 2 years, and these are 2 pictures of me. So 2012, 2016, a bit like the you know, the president in the States, you know, before and after. Now the hairstyle is different, I know, but you know, whether I had changed dramatically, I don't know. But since I've changed quite a lot the way that I'm working, now I can do that because I'm actually starting from scratch, more or less. So I have no, you know, PhD students or postdoc, because I was away for 2 years. So my working time now is much more reduced, actually. So it's more like 35, 40 hours a week. I enjoy that very much. Now, what I do is that I feel that I'm a lot more efficient than I used to be. And what I do is that I've radically changed the way that my time is scheduled. So I give much more importance to my schedule than before. And I would block quite a lot of the time and not allow anyone interfering with that. So I normally don't have any meetings before 10 a.m. Because this is the time where I'm the most productive. So for myself, early morning is where I can really think, and that's why I keep it for my time. What I do, similar to Ilse was describing, so I plan quite a lot my work. So every Friday evening, I plan what I will be doing the following week, so that I actually don't need to think the following week what I need to do. I just need to follow whatever is in my calendar, and I know that it just gets done. At the end of the day, I review what I've been doing during the day and what needs to be done the following day, and it works pretty well. I think it increased my efficiency quite well. I still don't do any email and work on the weekend and on vacation. I'm doing more strength workout, so no more cycling, but just increasing the muscle mass, because I think this is important as you age, and I am starting to age, unfortunately. I've introduced meditation. I think this is very helpful. So I try to do daily meditation as much as possible with some moments of gratitude. It's been shown to be very positive for your health. I do prioritize sleep, so I try to sleep as 7-8 hours per night, and it's not just the amount, but I think it's the quality to do that. I have some rituals, like cold shower after hot shower. If you're not aware of that, have a look at it. There's a lot of studies that shows the benefit of it. It reinforces the immune system, and it does actually put you in a different mood as well. I still eat healthy. I think this is very key as well. I enjoy my kids every evening, and I don't work anymore in the evening. So I used to work in the evening every day. I don't do that. So I try to read or write mostly, but also sometimes just watch Netflix with my wife. So a bit of quality time with my wife. And I do think that actually prepares me for my sleep, and it makes me feel much better, I think, also the following day. And this is how I've become. It's a bit of a transformation, but I like that. Okay, so just quickly on what are my top 5 advices on work-life balance. I think this is very similar to what has been said before. So be organized and strategic. So I think doing the important things, what Ilse has just been saying. I think you have an advantage of being in academia is that you have flexible time, and so I think you can make good use of that. I think living in the present moment is something also I've been experiencing quite a lot recently. I think this is very important, as much for your work as you're in your family. But I think the more present you are, the more I think focused you are, and the more actually efficient you are. Managing your expectations. So I think Aurélie talked about this. I think this is important to know, what are your goals, and that's important to set them, as Ilse were saying, them, every week or month or yearly. And I think it's important also that you find what are your stress releasing activities, whether it's exercise or meditation or Shrin Yin Yoku, that's the forest bathing. This is the new trend now. Whatever is working for you, really. Okay, so with that, we're finishing, and I'm going to stop sharing now. We're really running over time, so I'm not sure what we can do in terms of the organizers. Within the panel, I presume we can stay a little bit more, and if you're okay with that. Now, if some people have to leave, then we can leave. I don't know what Gabriele, how you see this.
Well, let's say that the discussion has been very interesting, and I think that we could take some questions among those in the list for at least, let's say, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
if it is possible for you just to stay in, I mean, just.
Yes, for me it's fine. I don't know for the others. So maybe what I'll go is that I'll go through the slides where first maybe the transition to the postdoc, which is the one that got most questions. Let me get back to this slide. Okay. Okay, so the first question was job market, alternative research positions for those who cannot find employment in universities. Maybe Giuliano, do you want to take that question?
Yeah. As I said, there are multiple roles in industry. If university is not for you, you realize that you want to seek for alternatives. There are multiple roles. As I said, the easiest probably is doing something similar you were doing in academia. Like there are research industry positions, and there are research and development. Development is something that, for example, I had to learn at the start because I was not doing any development or design development in my PhD. But besides of that, depending on your background, on your interests. There are multiple roles. Like you could do marketing because you don't realize that for example, with research, you have to do marketing of your research every time. Every time you go to a conference, you have to present your results. So you're very good in that skills, even if you don't know. But marketing is quite another easy role for someone who has a PhD. Or there are other roles like data scientists, for example. With PhD, you learn a lot how to manipulate data and interpret results. So that's quite another easy alternative I see, or some other options. But there are plenty of opportunities. You just need to spend the time to research and understand what is important for each position, basically. Yeah.
Thank you, Giuliano. So more to second question is how much relevant is mentoring from key scientists, experts relevant to reach an independent academic position? Is there any mentoring program available within ESB initiatives? Maybe Aurélie, you want to take this one?
Yeah, so I think I already alluded to it. So I think it can be very relevant. Of course, it's a bit personal as well, but I would advise to seek some mentors. These can be multiple people. These can be within your institution or people that you meet actually at an ESB Congress and that you have a connection with. Because they can just share, they can help you in multiple ways. They can give you a different perspective, so you can actually, ask them questions like, okay, what kind of choices would you make here, or what would you advise, or what did you do? It can just be very interesting to hear. But they can actually also, champion you. So they can also put you forward. They can, if there are opportunities, for example, to co-chair or to organize a session, or to give a keynote, they can put forward your name. So I think that is also another way why I think mentoring can be helpful. They can even, send you, again, vacancies of these kind of, tenure track positions, for example. So I think, yeah, having mentors can be beneficial. Within the ESB, actually, we don't have a mentoring program, but I think it's a very nice idea, and I'm going to take a note, and I think it's something that we can definitely discuss in the council. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Now, the third question is, as a postdoc looking for a permanent academic position, how should I control the pressure and stress of short-term contracts? Maybe Ilse, in your team, have you got experience with people who are in such situation?
Yeah, it's very hard, and I fully relate to that. The only thing that I can say to it, it's not that PIs are not willing to provide longer contracts, but this is just how the game of the funding. I think what you can do as a postdoc there is just discuss this openly with your PI, because, for instance, at KU Leuven, we have a very good practice that sometimes PI pull together resources. So I think we are very careful in hiring, but then if there is a need for funding where nothing is available, sometimes PIs step in. So I think that's the advantage of academia, where typically we want the best for the candidates that perform well. We can only lose by losing good candidates. So I see that on the one hand, that is a very stressful situation, but on the other hand, we always try to find solutions, and it is the game. It is the game of academia and short-term funding. The best thing you can do is try to secure a personal fellowship, but of course also that has some requirements. So I think just openly discussing that with your PI is probably the best you can do.
Good, thank you. Maybe I'll take on the fourth question. So when starting to look for a postdoc, 6 months ahead of PhD defense, postdoc being short-term contracts, how to handle this insecurity to still have a good work-life balance. And I agree that it's quite difficult to actually finish, a PhD on time, and at the same time looking for a job and being sure that there's not much gap in between. But I think that the more you look at it, as an early start, the better it is. And I think that it doesn't mean that you should be looking for postdoc positions right from your first year. But I think being curious and seeing where are the labs that you'd want to work in. So by going to conferences like the ESB and seeing what is going on in other labs, I think this is very important. And you can already start making connection with people. And when you need it, so whether it's 6 months or maybe 9 months, I think starting early is something I would advise. So already maybe 9 months or even a year, actually, because sometimes there are postdoc positions available, but it takes time to be put in place, and the recruitment takes time. So if you start discussing with a PI about it, they might already have in mind that they will have a position in a year's time. So it's always good, that they have your name in their mind. So it's always good to have first discussion, and also I think it's important for you to define where is your priority. So in terms of work-life balance, for example, are you okay to move to a different country, or this is no go, actually, based on your personal situation? I think this is very important. And if it's not, it's okay. For you just have to define where is your priority. And if you can't get a postdoc in your own city, but you really want to stay in your own city, well, I'm sure you'll find something else, maybe in industry, and it might last for a year, or maybe you'll get a postdoc later on in your own city. So, it's not that, if you don't get the dream postdoc just after your PhD, that you've lost all your chances, really. Maybe I'll just go to the industry questions, because I know that there were a few, and so we'll maybe finish on that.
Yeah, maybe in between when you're transitioning, I can also add that for opportunities, and also indeed when to look for a postdoc, also there I can only stress the importance of, for example, having some mentors. If they know that you're looking for a particular position, again, they might point you to particular opportunities. The same also for grants. So I think, yeah, in that sense, making some of your expectations of your goals explicit and discussing them with people that you trust, that have a bit more experience, can just be very valuable, because they can point you to opportunities.
Yes, definitely. So first question was, how can a PhD student promote himself in industry when his or her background is so academic specific compared to other candidates from the industry world? Maybe Giuliano, you can relate on that.
It is not an easy question. Like, it is quite hard, because you are competing with people who might have that specific experience. Even if it's short experience, you are competing with people within that industry. So what I suggest is to look inside you and to understand what is the leverage that you can use. Maybe you have developed some specific technical skills in your PhD. Those are giving you an advantage over to other candidates. Or the other thing is that, despite the technical skills, so the PhD gives you a methodology that's quite important. The scientific methodology, so that can be applied to industry as well. But again, as I was mentioning in my presentation, you have to explain that very well to people in the industry. Why is your PhD worth to people in the industry? Because they don't know it. So, take a lot of time in preparing your speeches. If you have the opportunity to go to speak to people in the industry, be careful what you say to them in terms of, not wasting your opportunity because you just touch on the wrong point. Basically, I think that's what I think.
Yes, thank you. And maybe we'll finish off with last question, maybe to Ilse. So are the short 1-2 year stints in industry useful after a PhD to decide between industry and academia? Is it possible to transition back?
Yes, I think if you're curious what life in industry is, I think you can do that. I think you just need to be careful that if you want to go back to academia, that you keep securing your publication output. Because if me as a reviewer of a CV, I see that there is a long break of publications, that is some sort of a flag that will raise. So I would consider the specific position and make sure that there still is an output during that period. And definitely, if you start reapplying for academic positions, really put forward that you went to industry and also give there your motivation in a personal statement, because that they will typically very much appreciate why you made the step to industry, and then it will be a good opening question on your interview on why you want to come back to academia. It just shows important motivators for yourself. So that would be what I would recommend.
Yeah, and I think that there is, it's become more and more accepted that there is no one pathway to academia. And, I think if you're talking about 1 year or 2 years, I think that it's always possible. I think don't limit yourself to what people think. If you think that's the right decision for you, then, do it. And if you really want to come back, I'm sure you'll find a means to do it. Okay, I think we're gonna stop here. I'm sorry we went far too much over time, but I hope that this has been helpful for everybody. And I'd like to thank again your time, and especially so Ilse, Giuliano, and Aurélie. And thank you, Gabriele, for being able to organize this as well.
Thank you, Damien, for proposing this event. And thank you to Giulia for the technical support. And okay, we start with the conference, with the Congress tomorrow morning with the ordinary sessions.
Great.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.